You were also, more recently, you were also, I saw you on your Instagram that you were some part of the new Foo Fighters 666 studio, the film,
Studio
right?
666. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. That was filmed very close to where you live, right? In Encino?
If my shade wasn't closed, I could show you right over there. Well, that was kind of funny. I had met Dave several times through the years, and he was always just so. I loved him. He's just a great guy. He's like a teenager.
Yeah.
And when I was hosting the pre-tell of the Grammys, I just had to keep giving them Grammys. It was great. And he lives in Encino, right near
Yeah.
me. It, Interesting. A lot of musicians on my street alone. My neighbor for 15 years was Graham Nash.
Wow. Yeah. Tom Petty used to live in Encino as well, right?
Tom Petty is right up there. He was on that one street was Ronnie James Dio, Tom Petty, Dave Grohl. Slash is over there,
Oh,
and you go
fantastic.
around the corner and you come down my street, and it's I think the singer for Little Feat, Graham Nash, myself, and all these other celebrities. A lot of them don't live there anymore.
Hmm.
So they were. I would run into Dave occasionally in Encino, and one day I was out jogging, and he stopped. Right, I stopped in front of my house, and he stopped. He was driving by, and so invited him in. We hung out for a little while, and he was telling me what they were doing up the street. Um, and he said, "I want to get you in the movie somehow." And I said, "Sure." Maybe to be a ghoul or a ghost or something like that. And I said, "Yeah, man, I'm right here. Just let me know." And then they came up with this one scene where it's a great movie. I saw it. I
Hmm.
mean, it's crazy. It's like really gory and really funny, and it's so Foo Fighters. It's great. And there was this one scene where Dave is starting to become possessed, and he's trying to show the band something, but he's half out of his mind, and he's got to play shreddy, but he doesn't really, Dave Grohl isn't a shredder. He doesn't need to do
Yeah.
any of that. So he called me, and I walked over, and it was great. And I had to play his guitar, which was quite a challenge, and it was tuned weird. And But I just did it, and it was great. And it ended. It's
Fantastic.
so funny. It's so funny because when you do movies, they're very specific, and they had to paint my hands like his tattoos.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
had to sit there for hours together while they painted our hands and stuff. And when the part came up in the movie, man, I just lost it. I almost peed my pants. It was so funny because I'm going, and Dave's just going, it's just so great.
Fantastic. I can't wait to watch it.
Yeah.
Congratulations on the new album. Um, I saw that it was number one on the charts, right?
Well, it was number one on the Billboard hard rock charts.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
debuted. It was a surprise and quite a delight.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I was just looking it up. I think the name of the album, Inviolate, means sort of free and safe from injury, right? And you've had your fair share of sort of mishaps over the last couple of years. Um, how are you now? Are you all right? How are things? How's your arm and
Yeah,
stuff?
well, I'm back in my knapsack. To put it in a nutshell, the whole story, because I see stuff in the press and it's quite odd. So it took many years for my shoulder to get as damaged as it was, and through that, I very holistic approach to things
Mm-hmm.
usually,
Mm-hmm.
and I did all sorts of things, and it just got to the point where it was so torn up they had to do the surgery. So a year ago December I went in, and it was perfect timing for me, and they fixed it, and it was great. And when I got out,
Yeah.
uh, I was like this, and the first thing I did was I picked up a guitar and I just started playing with one hand, and that inspired me to record Knapsack, and this is a knapsack. So I healed very quickly. But those surgeries, and I could play within like a week or so, but those surgeries take like a full year
Yeah.
to really heal, And once you start feeling real better, you kind of forget that you got to be real careful. And over the summer, I had a bit of an accident. I was actually making pizza, if you can believe it. And I had to pull the spatula out of the
No way.
oven. So the pizza goes in the oven. And I gave it 3 really good jerks in the worst position over
Oh
here.
no.
And it tore the tendon again. So it wasn't that bad, you know, and I thought that I could, and the doctor thought that I could get through the tour and I could kind of like
Mm-hmm.
do some approaches to help heal it. And so, you know, we had the whole tour booked, but then the last song that I recorded for the record was Teeth of the Hydra.
Yeah.
And I think that working on the Hydra definitely aggravated it to the point where it was torn to the point where it had to get fixed. So these are not complicated surgeries. They're cup surgeries. I had it fixed just a couple of days ago.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to be writing Knapsack Part 2. But really, that's the story. And you know, we're prepping to get on tour. We're looking at perhaps maybe the summer
Mm-hmm.
in Europe and then America. And the tour is like 250
Yeah.
shows around the world. And I certainly hope to be getting to India on it.
Oh, that'll be fantastic to see you in these parts again. India and Asia. I want to talk a little bit, Steve, about how sort of the album came together. I've read that, you know, you originally wanted to finish up 2005 project. I think it was called Real Illusions.
Yeah, but I have this trilogy of records. It's sort of like a big concept
Mm-hmm.
record.
Mm-hmm.
And it consists of this Real Illusions trilogy. And I was planning on doing the third installment, but it was a very big project, you know, a lot of vocals, a lot of musicians. And I started to, you know, sketch it all out. I had got the music together, I got everything ready. And then, you know, you wake up one day and you're in lockdown,
Yeah.
you know. So I had to switch gears like many musicians, but it was fine, you know, it was
Mm-hmm.
great actually, because you know, artists started to reach out to their fans
Yeah.
online. The whole Zoom thing emerged, and I started to work on some techniques and stuff that I hadn't really had time to do before. And one of them was the joint shifting thing I did in Candle Power. So I recorded Candle Power and uploaded that with a little video, and that was, you know, that was nice for the fans. They liked it,
Yeah.
and for the most part. And then I did a solo acoustic vocal version of a song called The Moon and I that I just did in my studio, which is something I never do, you know, sing and play. But the response was really good, and it inspired me to work on a project that I always wanted to do, but just never had the time. And that is a solo acoustic vocal,
Yeah.
you know, Steve Vai, the singer-songwriter. And the music doesn't sound anything like that, you know, it's very
Yeah.
kind of like my DNA. But and I started to work on that, and I got very far. I got to probably 14 songs, and then I got the vocals for about 3 of them, and then my shoulder went out. And by the time all that was done, and I was back in the studio, I really wanted to get on tour, and I
Yeah.
wasn't going to go on tour on a acoustic vocal record. It's just not going to happen. So that's when I said, all right, I'm going to finish this record, and I'm going to make it the best record I could make. I'm going to just be as honest as I can. And, you know, as you evolve in your craft, if you stick with it, you will evolve. And with Inviolate, I didn't want to have any quirky interludes, and I didn't want to have very big, densely produced songs
Yeah.
that have concepts and all this. I just wanted songs that I could play, that have great melody, and I can get on tour and play. And that's Inviolate.
Yeah. You know, so one of the things about Inviolate for me, the album itself, it has, like all of your other work, it has a lot of feeling in it, right? So how do you sort of manage that? In the sense, I think, is it right to say that there is a tendency to get too close to a song or a set of songs, given that like you said, in the pandemic, the amount of time you had. So how do you sort of distance yourself from the song and not make it sound too technically perfect and yet have that feeling in it?
Well, I don't distance myself, and I don't put up any limitations as to whether it's too technical or anything
Yeah.
like that, because sometimes something that's very effective is not technical at all, and sometimes something that's very technical is very effective, and vice versa, you know. So I try not there is a sensibility, you know. I am not going to make a song entirely too technical, because then I don't like it, you know. So that's how I well, I'm trying to figure out what you mean by distancing myself from a song, because it's a complete embracing of the song.
Okay. No, so let me rephrase this a little bit. So when you record a song, do you sort of do it all in one take, or do you sort of play it and then sort of come back to it, you know, a few days later? Is that how it's done? So there's, you know, there's sort of a distance from you and the song, so you don't get too close to the song, and it is, if there's a risk of it losing sort of feeling and emotion in that song.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes, it's a popular belief that you got to get something and you got to get one take, and even if it has mistakes, it's got the energy, and that's a very popular belief.
Yeah.
I don't go by that. I want it all. I want it to be technically precise. I want, if it requires sloppiness and a visceral kind of a overload, then that's what I shoot for. And I want it. I don't want to miss any marks, based on the way I would approach something.
Correct.
Everybody approaches their music or their whatever creativity in the world uniquely. Some people base their creativity on wanting to fit in, wanting to be successful in the world with it, you know. And but people who are slaves to their creative impulses, not there is no thought of any of that. There's only the idea, the compelling idea, and then the doing of it, you know. So my process varies greatly, but conventionally what I do is I look for little inspired ideas. Hang on one second. Hey Greg, can you grab me like a in the other room? Okay. So what I look for when I'm writing something is just something that has a little energy in it, something that's got a feeling, that has an atmosphere.
Yeah.
You know, and you can find that just by hitting a couple of chords, you know, and I give it my attention, and I don't have I try not to have any, there's no mental activity about what it means. It's just, where does it want to go? Where does it want to go? And sometimes that comes to me various ways. Usually before I go to bed, I have a guitar by my bed, and I'll pick it up and I'll noodle and I'll capture something on my iPhone. And that's how I have thousands and thousands of snippets of songs like this. And sometimes they're just like the first few chords, you know what I mean? Oh shoot, I forgot I can't play. Okay, I'll try. So like something like, Greg, strum this chord. You hear that?
Yeah.
Minor 7 flat 5, and then it goes. So when I started playing that, I said, there's an atmosphere in that, right? Do it again. So I said, well, that's kind of nice. I said, oh, that's kind of cool. So what I did was put it on the chair. So I just had that much, but there was an energy in it. So that will live on the shelf for years and years sometimes. And then when I'm looking for the right song for the right record, I just need that little bit, and the whole song is in it. So then I
Fascinating.
start to unpack it, you know. So in the unpacking process, I'm a little unconventional in that I usually don't get the band together and rehearse them and then record them. I do that occasionally, sure. And I'm not usually the guy that does everything in one take, like Edward or
Okay.
something.
Yeah.
I build my stuff. I work on it forensically
Mm-hmm.
because I'm not happy when I start repeating myself, and I definitely don't want to play what other people are playing, you know. So
Absolutely.
I have to just keep kind of working on it until something unique comes out. You take a song like, um, okay, well, you take a song like Sandman Cloud Mist.
Mm-hmm.
There was no real work on that. That was all improvised.
Okay.
It was just me sitting and playing 20 minutes, and then I edited down to 6 minutes or whatever. So that's a kind of a unique uh, listening experience for a Vive fan in that
Absolutely. Yeah.
just Vive, you know. But then you take something like, all right, Greenish Blues.
Yeah.
In that was a sound check recording that I discovered after the last tour, and it was all there. The, virtually every riff, the melody, and it was an improvisation. I couldn't believe it. It was so nice, and but the recording was shitty, you know.
Yeah.
So I actually re-recorded it, copying basically what I did because I really liked it. So then you take a song like, okay, so Zeus and Chains.
Yeah.
That solo section in there, there's nothing improvised about it.
Mm-hmm.
That
Mm-hmm.
was a conceptual approach, and I'm talking about the first part of the solo. And that approach was, I want to do something with the bar that I never did. So
Yeah.
I can't just jam that out, you know. I'm not capable of that because it requires doing something, imagining something, and then having to work on it because the stuff that I visualize
Mm-hmm.
is very difficult. Like Candle Power, you know, the joint shifting stuff, you can't improve. Maybe some guys can, I can't. That whole technique took me
Yeah.
weeks just to
Wow.
get those 8 bars, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, at the end of the day, I was really happy with it, and I can perform it as if I'm improvising because you know, because then it's part of my vocabulary.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a song on, and you're my last interview for the day, so I we go as long as you want.
Sure.
Um, uh, there's a song on Modern Primitive, which is the seventh song, and it's called "And We Are One."
Mm-hmm.
That, for me, that song has more uh, unique guitar techniques in it than anything I've done. And that required me to sit and do it piece by piece and just loop and loop and loop until I found a thread of a unique idea. You know what I'm
Fascinating.
saying?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
I would work on it and I exaggerate it. I would exaggerate it. And I'm not happy until my visualization of what I believe it should be is complete. And that's like with Zeus and Chains, that solo, the way it starts out, I said, I'm going to do something with and I visualize it. I'm going to play, pull the bar, play, let go of the bar, bend down. So it would create, I knew that it would create a sound that I had
Mm-hmm.
never done and I'd never heard. And I was right, but it required a lot of work before I recorded it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And the song "And We Are One," it's my greatest piece of guitar
Mm-hmm.
playing as far as the thing I do, I believe,
Mm-hmm.
because everything is unique in it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that to me is like heaven in a cup.
Yeah.
Nothing thrills me more than to listen to that
Yeah.
and realize the fantasy.
Yeah, yeah. That's fascinating because, I was going to ask you, I remember reading a Frank Zappa interview where he said, sometimes you can't write a chord ugly enough to sort of say what you want to say, right? So I was going to ask you, how do you translate what's in your head into a piece of music? So I guess this sort of, explains that, right?
Well, musicians, unlike non-musicians, have a relationship with music,
Yeah.
and they have an opening for that kind of thing, and it's something that you gradually acquire as you progress through the field. I would assume that there was a time when John Lennon said, "So this is an E chord," you know, in his life, and eventually started to say, "Okay, that's an E chord. Okay, that's that chord. Okay, so this chord
Yeah.
sounds like that." So now he has a little vocabulary, and then when it comes time to take his, what would Lucy in the Sky sound like, so he has the connection. Does he need technique like Steve Vai on the guitar? No, he
No.
doesn't want it. If he did, he would have it, but he would have to work his ass off like Steve Vai did. You know what I mean? But when I go to realize an imagined song, you have to have a relationship with the instrument
Yeah.
and know that at least what you're working on is filling in the musical emotional balance of
Yeah.
your the intention of your idea, and
Yeah.
that's not so difficult, if you're a musician. Okay, so what do you are you a writer or a guitar player, or
Yeah, I play very amateur guitar. Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
well, what do you do that in life that you really enjoy doing, and when you're doing it, you don't feel any pressure, you don't feel any.
Music, photography, and video. Yeah, that's what I do.
Okay, so music, photography, and video.
Yeah.
So music photography, one of the things that I discovered, because I've done multiple photo shoots with some of the best photographers in the world for 40 years. I've been doing photo shoots. And what I discovered about it is it's an art.
Yeah.
And a photographer's eye is unique to that photographer, because I would take pictures and I'd say, well, I'm not going to pay $10,000 to have a photographer do a photo shoot. I don't want to do that. What? It's a photo,
Yeah.
you know. So I say, can you can push the button. Let's do a photo shoot. It'll cost me nothing, and you'll take the photos, and I'll pose, because that's what it's about, right? Uh-uh.
Correct.
Every picture sucks. So how do you translate, if somebody said you're going to do a photo shoot with someone like myself,
Yeah.
or the kinds of subjects that you shoot, immediately when somebody says that to you, you're already figuring out how you're going to manifest it with a
Absolutely.
with a photographer's sensibility. So that's the answer to your question.
Fabulous. Yeah.
I do the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing. 62 now, do you sort of feel the need to take more chances with your music and with your sound? And has this album sort of opened that up a little more? There are various
Yeah.
influences on it. There's Celtic, there's a bit of sitar, there's all of
Yeah.
these influences.
Mhm. Well, I don't feel the need, but I feel the freedom. And I think what you said has some weight in regard to the age, because as you go through life and gather experience, your perspective on things change.
Exactly.
And I think when I turned 50, I sort of let go of a lot of baggage, and I think that was something that can come with age, where you start to realize that all these things that you worried about and tried to control in the past that just did not end up the way you believe they should be can turn out better than the way you think they should be. And also, you don't need to worry about those things that you can't change.
Yeah.
So if a person was to look into their own mind and recognize the kinds of thoughts that represent things that they don't have any control over, and if they were to eliminate those thoughts, I would assume that the amount of stress in their life could be reduced significantly. So that, I think, is a natural thing that can happen to people when they get older. Conversely, they can become more rigid, more fear, more closed off, you know. But mostly people get a little wiser. And the thing that I discovered, and I'll be honest with you, throughout my whole career as a musician, you feel certain ways about yourself, about where you stand as a player. Where now, this isn't something that's completely always at the forefront of my thinking, but it's in the background. How do you stack up?
Yeah.
You know, how do you stack up in the world? You know, this is a very egoic kind of a perspective, and how can you fit in? You know, you got to make sure this is the voice will say, you got to make sure you fit in. And are you sure that what you're doing is going to make you rich and famous and successful? Because if it's not, you're making mistakes. Okay, this is insanity. It's a form of insanity, and then this constricts you from being your authentic self.
Yeah.
Your authentic self is free. It doesn't mind what people think about what you're doing. You don't mind what they're doing. It's all fine. Everything is fine. And your authentic personality is very open, and it allows your unique creativity to come through. And everybody is unique, and their ability to be creative is unique, but they can block it by thoughts of insecurity and inferiority.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult to recognize that voice and to rise above it. You know, because your authentic personality is what wants to come through you, because it's your natural state of being.
Yeah.
Every person, there's something in them that is joyful. They may not be experiencing it all the time, but it's joyful, it's uplifting, there's clarity in it, there's appreciation for everybody and what they're doing, there's appreciation for what you're doing, there's absolute joy in the creative process, and nothing that you can possibly do when you're expressing your authentic personality could hurt anybody or yourself. It does the exact opposite. You feel free with the things that are important to you. Your sexuality, you have no hang-ups about what it is. You have no hang-ups about the color of the clothes or your hair or your size or your shape or your color. There's no thought of any of that. There's only the beautiful diversity of everything in the world for you to use with other people to be creative. That's your authentic person. That's your natural state. Okay. But unfortunately, well, I don't know about for reasons I can't explain, we have this screen that's can be called the ego, and what it is conditioned thoughts that we've learned along the way, and these thoughts have their foundation in fear. You know, when you were growing up and anybody ever said to you, "Don't do that," do you know what's going to happen to you? That's fear. And if you were to recognize fear in the way it was teaching you through your life, you would be shocked.
Yeah.
You would be stunned. Turn on the TV, it's all fear.
Yep.
You're being taught fear. How do you escape this shit? You can't. You have to have a very strong mind. But what people can do, they have to do if they want any peace and real creativity in their life, is they have to recognize in themselves the kinds of thoughts that they believe are true, that are actually conditioned thoughts that they picked up along the way and they believe are true that aren't.
Yeah.
This creates psychological suffering.
But Steve, having said that, how do you get feedback on your music?
I don't. I don't
That's
ask
interesting.
anybody anything. What I do is I come up with an idea, and then if I have some creative questions, there's a couple of people I go to
Yeah. Okay.
and I talk to, like my wife. She's
Mm-hmm.
extremely critical,
Mm-hmm.
which is good. It's been really good for me. I have a friend, Mike Mesker, who's my art designer, and he's very intuitive. He knows my music, he knows my potential, he knows what
Mm-hmm.
I can do,
Mm-hmm.
and he kind of knows when I'm hitting the mark and missing the mark. And I might explain a creative idea to him in order to get feedback.
Yeah.
But really, the feedback comes when it's finished,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Fair
and then
enough.
I,
Yeah.
I might play it for somebody.
Yeah. Yeah. But tell me, Steve. So how do you, you're widely known as a genius and a trailblazer and all of those things. So how do you handle sort of criticism?
Self-criticism or criticism
Criticism.
in general.
Yeah, in general, it could be a bad review. It could
Mhm.
be just criticism. So how do you handle that?
Well, the way that I've handled criticism has changed through the years. In the beginning, it was great because there wasn't really any bad criticism. There wasn't
Yeah,
much bad criticism. I was young. I
exactly.
was doing cool things with cool people. Even when I joined Dave Roth, well, then when I was with Alcatrazz and replacing Yngwie, um, it wasn't like we had an internet, so I couldn't really see what people were saying or anything. There was only waiting for a magazine, and we weren't really in the magazines very much. So there wasn't a lot of criticism. But with Dave Roth, everything exploded
Yeah,
for Steve Vai, and Crossroads, and uh, oddly enough, I don't recall receiving, I don't recall seeing a lot of criticism that I thought might be there. Oh, he's not Edward, you know, which would be fine because I would say the same thing, Uh, but the criticism, the intense criticism came. Okay, so then I did Passion and Warfare, and that really, I didn't see any real bad criticism. It's at the when there's this much of it and there's this much good stuff. There's
yeah,
always, no matter what you do,
yeah,
there's people that don't like the Beatles. So you got to just get over it and realize that because you're not going to please everybody. You can do the best thing you've ever done that's a hit single or whatever it is, and when you're reading the thread, your eye is going to find that bad criticism because the ego, that's what it does. And then that's going to bug you. When 9 out of the 10 statements are amazing.
yeah,
So it wasn't until I did Passion and Warfare, and that my cachet really exploded because that's when people are like, who's this guy? It's whatever. And I was winning all the awards. I was on the cover of all the magazines,
yeah,
and the ego came right in the back door. Because
yeah,
at first, with all in the beginning, with Roth and all that stuff, I was like, "What are these people talking about? I'm not that good." There's this is just me. And then finally, when Passion and Warfare came out, the ego started telling me, "You see, you're all that, Vi.
yeah,
Yeah, you're the chosen one. This stupid shit." And then you start believing it, and there's always the ego has a built-in self-destruct mechanism, and
yeah,
it's called deep suffering. And there was a period when the whole music scene changed and grunge came along,
exactly.
and I
Yeah,
released Sex and Religion. I would bet anybody $1 that they cannot find more negative, vicious criticism written about a guitar player in a 3-year period than me. Because the fashionable thing at the time was to attack anybody that knew how to play an instrument,
Yeah.
and I was that flashy guy. So I was a great object of attack. And boy, was I attacked, especially with Sex and Religion, because it was a totally different kind of a record.
Yeah.
So how did I deal with that criticism is your question.
Yep.
It was the best thing that ever happened to me because it was so hurtful to my ego, which was good because it was like being crucified. And after being crucified, there was a rebirth. There's the crucifixion and the resurrection, as they say, So I didn't deal with it well.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the answer. There was a lot of mental suffering on my part. Because remember, my ego told me I was great. And now everybody is telling me I suck,
Yeah. Yeah.
So an interesting thing happened, though, that I didn't realize till later. It didn't stop me from making the music that was important to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Do you understand?
Yeah.
My inner musical instincts were not concerned with my ego. They just wanted to make me feel excited and happy and like I'm doing my job.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I just kept doing my job, and then I released it was Alien Love Secrets, which is a great record. It's a great guitar
Fantastic
record.
album. Yeah.
Fire Garden.
Mm-hmm.
And, so I just thought, I'm just going to march ahead. I don't care. I don't care if I have a career. I got to the point where where I was at various times before, which is I don't care about my career. I just want to make this music.
Yeah.
And lucky for me, there was enough in that music that it attracted an audience that has been enabling me to do it on a professional level for since then. And then a funny thing happens that I recognize is if you just stick with what is important to you, you just stick with it regardless of what's happening in the outside world. You have to completely allow yourself to either see the value in it or to just put it aside and prioritize. Your priority is your creative, unique musical expression. You should tattoo that inside of your eyeballs because that's the only thing that matters.
Yeah.
So when you have that, you have your joy.
Yeah, because then your definition of success changes then, right? It's not about getting on a Spotify playlist, or it's not about awards or, the charts.
Yes. And I didn't realize that until then. The awards, they're nice. They're nice, but they come with there's always a price to pay in a sense,
Yeah. Yeah.
You start believing, all this stuff. So my message to those that suffer from the feeling of criticism from others is first thing to recognize, and this is tough to recognize, is when somebody is criticizing, they're not talking about you. They're talking about themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a hard thing to recognize, but it is true.
Yeah.
Because if you have to attack somebody, and critique is different than criticism. Your tasteful opinion is different than attack. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So when you attack somebody, what you're doing is actually attacking yourself, and you're trying to get rid of a guilt that you have.
Yeah. Yeah.
By projecting it onto somebody else. I know that this sounds like I don't need Steve Vai to be a shrink.
No, I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying because it's just fascinating to get your perspective on it, because when you're hailed as the absolute everything about the guitar, and it's hard to not let that get to you in a sense.
But what happens, and as you mentioned, age too, and having gone through it and recognizing the non-significance in allowing myself to allow suffering in me because of the way other people have an opinion.
Yep.
That it's so nice. It's so nice when you discover the freedom in allowing others to have their opinion and being okay with it. Like it's fine. It's fine, you know. Sometimes it's even helpful to me.
Yeah.
But if you're suffering from being attacked, recognize that um, it's you that are allowing yourself to feel that way. It's not the other person.
Yeah.
They're only
Yeah.
talking about themselves. You're allowing stress. It's not
Yep.
that they're stressing you out. That bad review is stressing me out. Well, replace those words with I'm allowing somebody else's opinion of me to
Me.
stress me out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So once you recognize that you're doing it, you can start to it can start to dissolve,
Yeah.
because then opinions are not cherished. And what becomes most important, and this is what I recommend you focus on when you feel criticism: forgive it, allow them to have their opinion. Don't take it personally,
Mm-hmm.
and focus on your creative instincts, your
Yeah.
unique creative instincts. Throw yourself into them with no excuses whatsoever, and you will find joy.
Yeah, fantastic. But Steve, this creative instinct that you speak about has also extended now to guitar design, right? Earlier, it was the sort of the seven string, and you bringing it to the mainstream, and now with the Hydra. Uh, I saw you. I saw you on another podcast. You were playing the. It surprised you as to how sort of playable the instrument is from the time you kind of got it to now.
Yeah, actually, because the way that they built it, it is
Hmm.
playable.
Hmm.
Uh, I don't necessarily think it's something that you might want to stand and walk around and play. Some people
Yeah.
can. That you got to, if you're strong,
Yeah.
and I can do that,
Hmm.
but it's risky because it's so heavy. You know, every time I try to swoon, it
Yeah.
throws your equilibrium off.
Hmm.
But that was the Hydra was just another. When you said your creative instincts, you have a creative instinct, and then it shows itself in different ways.
Absolutely.
So the impulse is there to be creative with something. And for a
Hmm.
guy like me, it's about, for a song like that, it was basically about I want to create a multi neck guitar where I perform a piece of music that sounds like an enjoyable piece of music with a nice melody on an instrument that is the only instrument in the track
Yeah.
besides the some keyboards and the drums. So, and I knew that it would require me to have to develop a sort of multi-limb
Yep.
independence that I knew I didn't have. But the idea was compelling, and a compelling idea that you receive from the universe, it comes to you completely packed. Is one, whoosh, there it is. And
Yeah.
then it takes time to even explain it. And the egoic fantasy requires mental intellectualization with yourself. It's true. You sit there and you go, oh, I got to do this, and then I got, and then well, if I do this, then it is, and if I, okay, well, wait a minute, let me try. But usually, in a creative impulse, a true, unique creative impulse, just whoop,
Yeah.
ah, and that's what happened with the Hydra. And it was, if I had to explain it, it's that I want to create a song that's visually stimulating for people because I'm an entertainer and I love entertaining,
Yeah.
and is musically adept and effective musically, where it's got a nice melody, and I wanted it to have teeth.
Yeah.
You know, I wanted it to kick ass, and I didn't want the song to sound like a novelty for the guitar. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Hmm.
So then we went about building the guitar, and when I finally got it and I stood behind it, I almost had a heart attack.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
thought, oh my God, what am I going to do here?
Yeah.
But you start slow, and once you start doing something that seems impossible, it doesn't seem impossible anymore. But here's how I knew I could do it.
Hmm.
I knew when the idea came. There's a knowing. I know I can do it if I put the time in. If you said to me, I want you to do it with no hands, I'd say, well, I know I can't do that. You know what I mean? And I'm not going to try.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's a governor in my mind that says, yes, that's above your ability, but you can do it. You
Mm-hmm.
can.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a knowing. And then there's those ideas that are like, no, that's a fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
No. So I don't
Yeah.
entertain those.
So the only time I've seen not something like the Hydra, but I remember years ago I saw Linda Manzer, a luthier, had designed some. I think it was a 42 string guitar for Pat Metheny,
Yeah, that's the Picasso
the
guitar.
Picasso, and then I saw Rick Nielsen of Cheap Trick. I think he had a 5 neck
Yeah, yeah.
guitar back in the 80s. Uh, I think both those guitars were available commercially with some modifications. Do you think the Hydra will ever be available, Steve, commercially?
That's really hard to say because it's a one-off right now, and it's a highly technical instrument.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah,
a lot. It's well engineered, and I think that it will help inspire people to build similar type of crazy instruments. And I've seen a lot of great
yeah.
multi-neck guitars and people playing them great. You know, these days on the internet, people send me things, and I've seen this one player that was playing like a 3 neck, but it was acoustic,
Mm-hmm.
and he was doing all that kind of stuff, and it was beautiful, you know. And Pat Metheny uses that Picasso guitar
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
Um, so what I'm doing isn't unique in that way,
Mm-hmm.
not at all. But I don't think I've seen a multi-neck instrument uh, playing a song with that much teeth.
Yeah, yeah. I think,
Rock song.
yeah, what also blew me away about the Hydra was, it's a sort of, there's so much modern technology in it. It has an Ethernet port that kind of, sort of, I fell out of my chair reading that. So,
Well,
um,
people don't quite understand what that port is. I can explain it. The Ethernet port, it's a Cat 6, and
mm-hmm.
when you have that many necks and that many outputs, because it's got 4 outputs and MIDI and all this stuff, uh, you don't want to have 5 inputs in the guitar. You know,
Ah,
it
okay.
doesn't work.
Yeah.
So all of the audio for the instrument goes through the Cat 6,
Ah,
which is
okay.
the Ethernet. People think it's like you can hook up to the internet. And you know what? That's a good idea. I think I'll steal it. Anyway, so that then goes to a brain,
Mm-hmm.
Hydra, that was built. And this is another highly technical piece of gear. And that takes the inputs from the Hydra and then spits them out to these inputs into, well, okay, yeah. So the fractal
Mm-hmm.
3,
Yep.
that's what I use. And that
Okay.
has 4 inputs.
Mm-hmm.
So I put each neck into one of those inputs, the 3 necks and the
Okay.
harp strings.
Makes sense. Okay.
And then each one of those can now be stereo. That's how powerful that device is. It's the only one I know that can really do it
Yeah.
effectively.
Yeah.
So then I have I have a stereo output for the 7-string that actually goes to my rig. So the
Fantastic.
7-string neck goes through my whole rig, but
Yeah.
all the other necks come out and they go to the front of house
Mm-hmm.
and the monitor system. So that's how I monitor everything.
Fantastic. I think that's, from whatever I've been reading about the Hydra, I think that's sort of something that people miss, that it's almost that perfect blend of art meets technology, right? Like you said, inspired by Mad Max meets Leo Fender sort of thing.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, right. But
yeah.
the thing is, it's got to be a good song, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, or it's got to. You can build all the technology, but
Mm-hmm.
if it's not, you want it to sound good. So yeah, it's.
Yeah.
I only did that one song so far, but I've got a lot of ideas of
Ideas
how I.
for more songs. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know if I'll get to them, but maybe somebody else will. And to answer your question, it's maybe it's too early to tell if it's the kind of thing where Ibanez may make some more for some other people, but boy, you'll have to be rich.
Yeah. But I'm sure there's lots of people out there that would, gladly, this looks like it could be in a museum. So I'm sure there's lots of people out there, lots of fans of yours that would happily, buy one of these.
Well, maybe if they're nice enough, they can come over my house and play mine.
Yeah, but Steve, what is your view? We spoke about technology. What is your view on modern technology and guitar playing? Has digital technology made everyone an artist at some level, in your opinion? I was talking to Jordan Rudess, and he's got this app called GeoShred. What is your view on technology and amp simulators and all of that stuff?
I always look to technology and ask myself, how can this serve me? Because technology is going to continue to evolve. And there's things evolving right now that I'm unaware of that I'm very eager to see when they happen. So I embraced the technological revolution. There's things about it that I think can be cleaned up, and I believe people will clean them up. But the perspective and the attitude about technology amongst the musician community, and perhaps everybody, varies. There's usually, I kind of categorize it in three different categories. The first category is like a gloom and doom,
Yeah.
where somebody's perspective is fear. It's like, well, technology has made it so that everything is fucked right now. Nothing is
Yeah.
everything in technology is holding me back from making any money or having a career or any of these kinds of things. So there's a negative perspective that a person can harbor. And if that's the case, then what they will find is that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, then there's those like myself that look at the technology and ask themselves the question, how can this serve me?
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
great stuff. I'm a creative person. I like being creative with all sorts of odd things, and I like exploring new things. How can it serve me? And another perspective, a third perspective, which is perhaps that of people that breathe thin air, is okay, well, this is what's going on in technology. What's missing? And how can I make it?
Yeah.
How can I
Yeah.
create it?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
those are innovators, and we need them. And so my perspective is sometimes I'm looking ahead of the curve, and sometimes I'm just embracing the curve.
Yeah, yeah. It's fascinating because, I love the way you've embraced technology, even with the marketing of the video. I think there was an NFT auction for
Yes.
the Hydra reveal video. So I thought it was a great idea. And I think you're one of the earliest people to have sort of, gone that route.
Oh, well, thanks. The NFT route was a confusing one for me. I started following it in the beginning, and I didn't understand it at all. I just was like, why? Why would anybody want to pay that much for something that they look at, and that anybody can have,
Yeah.
So I didn't understand it, and then more and more people started doing it. And then I started getting approached, and I was getting approached like probably once a month by a firm or somebody that wanted to mint EFTs for NFTs for me. And, the pitch was always, you can do this and you can do that. You can do all these things. And then you can have this NFT. And I'm just like, I don't know. There's something really, it's not adding up in my head. What it is and what it does. But then, and I didn't think I had anything really worthy to offer, but then when we did this video for the Hydra, the reveal, I decided that I didn't want to mess around. What I was going to do was, makeshift it, set it up in my studio, and take a camera and then reveal it. And I'm like, this instrument, there's way too much
Yeah,
put into
absolutely.
it. I got to do this right. So me and Mikey Mesker decided that he found this company. We got 3 different bids for the people to make that 90-second video. And this one company, U and Co, is like the number one company in Hollywood that makes incredible trailers. I mean, this guy is inspired. And it was $90,000 for 90 seconds, $1,000 a second to make that video.
Wow.
And then I thought we might have something worthy of an NFT that could be coveted as something unique, because that video is very well done. And it's the unrevealed video of the Hydra that we're doing. And it's not impossible to assume that that will become a kind of a famous guitar just because of its weirdness, you know? So then I started to research the metaverse, which was something I didn't understand. And then it all started coming together, what's happening. And what that is, in my mind, is if you look around you, you'll notice that people are giving their attention to technology. They're putting their brain, their mind, their attention, their world is in TikTok, this YouTube, Instagram, these kinds of things. So there is a universe out there that and it could be qualified as a different dimension. And it's the metaverse, and what it is the digital realm. So what's happening is people are starting to actually stock the metaverse as if it was being constructed as another planet of sorts. So there's things in the metaverse that people harbor as they do in the physical world that they believe will be valuable in this metaverse. And one of those is an NFT. That's where we live. You know, that's where when you have an NFT in the metaverse, there's value. There's people spending millions and millions of dollars buying real estate in the metaverse. Okay. So something is happening. Whether it falls on its face or not, I don't know. But at one point I felt that it was worthy to experiment with offering the Hydra video as an NFT. Plus, there's some potential there to get some of my investment back. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So as a musician, you have to think economically, and all those people that really feel bad that one of their favorite artists is dabbling in something that they hate, like NFTs. Be a musician and have to make your economics balance, and you might discover that you'll be looking for any means necessary.
I totally understand. But it's fantastic to see you sort of embrace that. I want to talk a little bit about another aspect. How important is teaching to you? Do you still do a lot of teaching?
I love teaching. I always have. And there's 2 kinds of what I did was I launched 2 live streams in the beginning of the pandemic, and one of them was called Alien Guitar Secrets. And in it, I just love discussing. I have a lot of experience. I've been touring for 42 years and making records, and I've gone through a lot of the ropes, and I understand them, and I see what works, what didn't work for me. And I know things. I see people that have particular perspectives of what the industry, what their career, all these things. They have these perspectives, and some of them are like, they don't really understand what's going on. And I almost feel like it's a responsibility. It's a lovely responsibility to take what I know, what I've learned, and offer it as food for thought. You know, I like that. And I feel like it's something, that's how I learned.
Yeah.
from people who are doing that. And then there's the Under It All live streams where I talk, but it's more on discoveries I've made in my spiritual studies and journey. But I
Mhm.
love teaching.
Yeah.
You learn when you teach.
Yeah. No, it's amazing if you're able to, sort of teach people how there's a spiritual side to your music and how spirituality has sort of impacted your music and um sort of helped it along. I think those
Well,
things are as valuable as teaching guitar technique, I think.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, I agree. See, and that's why I do the Under It All, and and some people who visit the Under It All, are just guitar heads and they don't get it. That's not for them. That's fine. And then there's some people that are just guitar heads and
mhm.
they get it, and it's very helpful because
Yeah.
the study of spirituality is the study of the self. That's it. And when you start to study yourself, then you can start seeing those things within yourself that are causing you
Hmm.
mental anguish or quality of life. It's all you. That's what you discover. It's all you.
Yeah.
So when I started to sort of understand this and experiment with recognizing the quality of the thoughts I was thinking and then changing them, this dissolves stress in your life. When you dissolve stress, you're more yourself. Your authentic personality and your creativity can blossom and flower in ways that it just cannot when you're
Hmm.
when you're mentally suffering.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So that's why it's so helpful in ways that musicians may not understand. Not when I
Yeah.
say musicians, I mean some, many do. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. Steve,
many do, and yeah, sorry, go ahead.
sorry, last question before I let you go. Two big parts of your musical life have been David Lee Roth and Frank Zappa, both very different people, right? David Lee Roth was all about performance, and Frank Zappa was very composition oriented and technical and all of that. What are your biggest lessons from Zappa and David Lee Roth that you sort of draw inspiration from today?
Well, probably a day doesn't pass that I don't somehow incorporate things I've learned from those guys. With when I was with Frank, Frank was a very free thinker, and the music was organized and arranged, and I had to play it a particular way, and it was difficult. So my whole focus with Frank was watching him. I didn't even know there was an audience. Well,
Yeah.
I knew. I paid little attention, but so many things I learned from Frank. I learned that probably the most important thing is you're free to do whatever you want. You,
Hmm.
you just have to do it, and that's big because to understand that statement is very different than mental lip service of what that statement means. Yeah, I'm free. I do what I want. You'd
Yeah.
be surprised how we restrict ourselves. So Frank didn't have any of that, and he was always fair, always honest, always funny, and he was just Frank. And there's no way to kind of quantify what I learned
Yeah.
from him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
with Dave Roth, it was very different, but I still felt like I fit in well because I was rock and roll in my blood from when I was a kid and all. But Dave, I learned. Dave was an incredible performer. He had charisma. He worked hard with me, and I learned how to project to a large audience.
Yeah. Yeah.
It wasn't about just one guy and playing all the right notes. It was now you're an entertainer, and I
Yeah.
loved it. And he taught me a lot. And also Dave's intense. People don't really know that. He he goes to the wall with whatever it is he wants to do. When you see him doing a jump and stretching his leg like that, that was because he spent years and years in pain,
Yeah.
stretching. Even when we were recording Skyscraper, you know, and or anything, he would be sitting in the corner stretching or doing something, you know. And yeah, what I learned from those guys that has stayed with me, and there's
Yeah.
so much more, you know.
Yeah, yeah. But Steve, thank you so much. Thank you for your time. You're
Uh-huh.
out on tour. You start in Europe in the summer.
Well, we're hoping so. You know, we got
Mm-hmm.
to see how things end up turning out.
Mm-hmm.
Hang on one second. Okay, I'm sorry. So yeah, let's end the interview, and then I'll show you the Hydra clip.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sure. Let me just turn this off. And that's it for this week's episode of Tales from the Road. Tales from the Road is brought to you by the concert photographer and moving pictures media. Don't forget to join us next week for another episode. If you like what you heard, subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or Google Play. Thank you for listening.